Alabama Governor Kay Ivey says she plans to vote for Roy Moore in the December 12th special election, even though she says she has no reason to doubt the women accusing Roy Moore of sexual misconduct. Let's bring in Sophia Nelson, NBC News and NBC BLK contributor, former House GOP committee counsel, and MSNBC political analyst Jonathan Alter, also a columnist for Daily Beast. Good to see you both. We'll go ladies first here, Sophia. Do you think this is all going to boil down to what voters think is most important, another GOP Senate vote or the candidate's morality?
So it's good to be back. Two things. One, Roy Moore is steadily dropping in the polls. Depending on which one you look at, he went from being ahead to now he's not. I think that obviously the Alabama voters are going to decide what they think they want to do here, whether it's Doug Jones or Roy Moore, given everything that's happened. I suspect that he will lose the vote. I have faith in the voters of Alabama. I think that there are some people who pollsters aren't talking to. I'm disappointed in Governor Ivey. I'm disappointed in the women I see holding press conferences backing Roy Moore. I'm stunned and horrified by that. Women not supporting women, though, is not a new thing. We've seen it a lot. So I do think that there's a challenge here, and I do think that Roy Moore will lose. But I think that, we're going to see what Alabama's going to do.
Yeah. Jonathan, Sophia brings up the polls, and specifically these new polls have Doug Jones leading Roy Moore by 5 points and 8 points, respectively. How much stock are you putting in those numbers, Jonathan? You think there could still be some sort of a silent majority backing Roy Moore who just isn't willing to publicly admit that right now?
Yeah, I think you cannot at all rule out that there are a lot of people who don't want to tell pollsters what they really think. And you also have the fact that there's more than 3 weeks to go before the election. Remember, Alex, a month before the presidential election last year, the Access Hollywood tape came out, and a lot of Republicans withdrew their support from candidate Donald Trump. And then, a month later, people weren't talking about it anymore. So sometimes these issues, strangely enough, can fade. I mean, this one should be different because we're talking about underage women, teenagers. That's what separates it from a lot of these other cases that have been in the news. And Roy Moore, basically admitted it. He said that he asked the mothers whether he could date their daughters, and in his interview with Sean Hannity, he gave conflicting statements. This idea that he's denied all of this is not actually consistent with the recent record, and for the governor of Alabama to say that she's going to support him anyway, even though she believes the women, that is truly putting party ahead of any elemental sense of decency or respect for children. Now, what would have happened, Alex, if these had been young boys? At what point would the governor of Alabama and other Roy Moore supporters say enough? If it doesn't even work for young women, teenagers, we're really in a bad place morally in a state with voters that claim that they're close to God.
Sophia, a bit later on this morning, the Reverend William Barber will be speaking at an anti-Roy Moore news conference, and he's been calling Roy Moore's Christian rhetoric hypocritical. Does he have a point?
I think we've seen a lot of this. It started with Donald Trump in 2016. Look, I consider myself an evangelical Christian, but at the end of the day, I've been deeply disappointed in the racial divide. That's a whole nother show for another day. We need to do about how white evangelicals versus black evangelicals are approaching this issue of Roy Moore, i.e. Reverend Barber, and what he's going to say, which I'm sure is going to be very in your face to Roy Moore. So I think there is a hypocrisy here that's stunning, like Jonathan said, with children, underage, sexual contact, assault, and you saw the guy that said it was Joseph and Mary, like Joseph dated Mary. I mean, anybody to say that is really, like Jonathan said, we're in a very difficult place in this country on a number of fronts, and this is a big one right here.
Jonathan, the word hypocrisy is also being aimed at Democrats over the way the allegations against Bill Clinton were handled during his time in office. Can you understand where those criticisms are coming from?
Yeah, I do, but I think people forget, and I covered all of this in the 1990s very extensively.
You sure did, yeah.
Bill Clinton did pay a pretty big, he went through a whole impeachment trial in the Senate, and it wasn't as if there wasn't any accountability. I thought, and a lot of other people did, including a lot of Democrats, that he should have been censured by the U.S. Senate for his conduct in the Monica Lewinsky case. But we don't want to get into the situation where people who were not, covering it or not even alive at that point think that he paid no price. That's not the case.
So we have Democratic Senator Al Franken also facing fallout over claims of sexual misconduct. And the White House is drawing a distinction between the accusations aimed at then-candidate Trump last year and now those aimed at Senator Franken. The White House press secretary saying Senator Franken has admitted to wrongdoing. The president hasn't. So, Sophia, should admitting to misconduct, does that warrant different treatment?
Yeah, absolutely not. The bottom line is the president has had somewhat close to 16 women accuse him of sexual assault. And Al Franken had one, I guess, with the photograph, and he quickly apologized. He said, I'm wrong. I should be investigated. Donald Trump refuses to say any of that. He called the women liars and said he was going to sue them. So there is a double standard,
Alex,
and it's wrong.
Real quick, Jonathan.
Alex, we're in a situation where if you lie, that's better than admitting error and trying to move on. And also, Donald Trump did admit he did it. The Access Hollywood tapes, he says you can grab him by the you-know-what. And he goes on to describe that he took part in this kind of activity. There's voluminous evidence that he did so. So this is just another sign of how degraded our national conversation has become by this president.
Well, I'm glad for ours, though. Jonathan Alter and Sophia Nelson, thanks so much.